All right, so we're going to move on. Again, our next meeting is August 18th. We'll be talking about balancing and bank reconciliation. So again, that's going to be more of an accounting side, not necessarily equipment. We're hoping by that time, most of the equipment will be released, but we're not positive. We're still working out issues that we want to make sure is clean before we send it out. All right. So we're going to get right started. Equipment, preventive maintenance parts. These are the pieces that we've put together for preventive maintenance and working with your equipment. So we start with meter readings. Again, meter readings is one of the places that we hold the latest reading for a vehicle. It's not tied anymore to work orders. It's not tied to any more maintenance or anything. It's just simply the place where we hold the last reading for a vehicle. We did this so that we could identify quickly and easily produce the maintenance scheduling component. So again, this is what readings is about. Second part that we did was a preventive maintenance, where you define maintenance tasks, you assign tasks to vehicles. Tasks are kind of defined as kind of what it is we're going to do it and how often we want to do something. So it's kind of like you're setting up not just what the task is, but how often do you want this task to be done for a vehicle. And it's very flexible. You can create a task with a default task that's every 5,000 miles, or you can just create the task and then each individual piece of equipment can set their own individual miles and hours that would go to it. Yeah. Schedule maintenance then is where we take all that information and we crunch it together to do the math and try to show you in a decent way what needs to be done, and basically allows you, not us, but you, to create work orders. So you can easily create the work order right from the schedule maintenance tab. That's kind of the goal of the whole thing in the end, is the scheduling maintenance component. Then schedule maintenance creates the work orders. So then, obviously work orders will need to indicate what work needs to be done, and we'll be able to maintain and capture all the mechanic notes and equipment that's used for each of the tasks in a work order. And then we have one other last little piece, which is if you do have a fleet management provider, again, we can assign, we need a place to say the fleet management provider vehicle equals this equipment code. And we made a little screen to help with that, just because it's a kind of a big thing to have working correctly. So let's kind of break down a preventive maintenance cycle, just so we all understand what we're thinking versus what might be reality for everybody, but at least what we're thinking when we put this together. We started with meter readings. Meter readings is one of a spot where we call engines that gather information as time goes on over and over again. So again, we have, meter readings can be gathered through different places automatically if you have like a Samsara or a fleet management provider like Verizon. Otherwise, it's going to be something that is through a file import. If you're doing manual, direct imports, you can do that through making a simple Excel spreadsheet and saving it as a CSV file. You can do direct entry, which is just keying it in to our screen. As well as it can also be brought in from the fuel import. But again, this one, the meter readings is only 2 of the 4 what I call engines that can drive when we're going to bring in a piece of equipment for preventive maintenance. So basically the 4 engines that we have is we have dates. Obviously, that's going to keep going on and on because the sun comes up tomorrow every day. So dates will always be progressively going on. So the last time I did something, every 90 days I want to see something. So if the last time I did something was 90 days ago, I want to now see it again, and it will show up in preventive maintenance to say, I want to see it again. You don't have to use dates, but you can use dates. We suggest having at least we suggest using dates for what we call you may want to see something every 100 hours of use of a vehicle. But we say, okay, if you think that this vehicle, there's no way this vehicle would ever extend beyond, let's say, 180 days, it would absolutely have 100 miles or 100 hours of usage within 180 days. Put 180 days on the same preventive maintenance just in case the day comes in where there's a bad reading, or the Samsara provider, for some reason, the key card doesn't grab the readings anymore and it's just stale. So the last reading we have is from 2 months ago, yet we're coming up close to that time. That's all it is, just a safety net, if you would, on some of the items that you might not have. So we ask that you kind of think that you should always have some kind of a date thing going on with all of your preventive maintenance. But that's up to you guys. If you don't want to, you don't have to. It's just a recommendation. The next one that we have that is here, the next two are hours and mileage. So those are clearly from this meter readings. You get hours and mileage in here, and that's what you get here. And then the final one, which again, it's kind of another one, we call that usage. And that's gathered as people put in their time cards and they say they use this piece of equipment for 8 hours. So you can build a meter, that's another engine that we provide in our system that you could use for things that might not have accurate meters within them. So again, there's 4 different engines. You can use 1, 2, 3, or 4 for any given one. I'll show that, but the understanding is those are the engines that drive when something gets done. The next part to the cycle is the preventive maintenance task itself. It holds a preventive maintenance task when it's assigned to a vehicle will hold what in the heck is the difference, the intervals is what we call it. So every 90 days, every through 5,000 miles, every 200 hours, or every 29 hours of usage, or 50 hours of usage. All of those are available and are used within this, but this is what you set the interval to. And you can change them. You don't have to, once it's assigned, you say, oh, well, it was supposed to be 5,000 miles, but really I want to see this one every 4,500. And you can simply just make the change. We didn't make any of preventive maintenance forcing you to do something, and then once you do it, you can't change it. It's very flexible, it's very organic as far as allowing everybody to make any kind of change they need to. And I'm going to kind of show that here when we get to the show and tell portion of today. But you got to get the idea. It's pretty much these maintenance tasks. It's kind of, the intervals are what's important. How often do we do it? The other part of the task for maintenance task is also a nice, good, long description of what in the hell you want done when this task is to be performed. So, for instance, you might have a simple task like oil change, or a lot of places will call it preventive maintenance, A or B. But if you spell out then once in text what in the heck you want that to be, then as you add those to equipment, that text will get put into the work orders so that every time the work order is generated, they'll see, make sure you do this, make sure you check the belts, make sure you top off the fluids, make sure you're looking at the windshield wiper fluid, make sure you're looking at these things, anything you want within the task. You get 2,000 characters to describe what you want a task to do. So again, it's important to be as descriptive as possible there. So that way, when a mechanic gets a hold of it, there isn't a question. Okay, it's preventive maintenance A. What the hell was preventive maintenance A? And it's not spelled out anywhere. So this was a place that you can spell it out, is when you're generating and creating these tasks. The next step then will be for what I would say is the equipment operator, if you would, or who's ever maintaining the fleet. He'll be running scheduled maintenance. And what we do here is we take and we use the meter readings and the last time a task that we have on file was done. And then, of course, we'll do the magical, what I call the long math, the long division, to figure out whether it needs to be performed or whether it's coming close to being performed, or you've got days over. So as you go along in this, when you finally get all your pieces of the pieces of equipment set up in it, you'll end up with a very clean list, and you'll have just a few things every day that will show up, as well as you can do things like saying, okay, in 15 days what's going to show up, or you can change a lot of things in here to say, I want to see what's getting close, what's like 80% or 90% of the way there, and what's coming up. We kind of have the ability to show all of that now. So you can kind of play a little bit around in there if you're kind of waiting to see if, like, okay, heaven forbid you have nothing to do, it's like, okay, you could bring something in a little early perhaps. And then, of course, from schedule maintenance, again, you can just click a button and say, generate the work order for that preventive maintenance item. And then finally, the cycle, the work orders are printed or sent electronically to some kind of device. Your mechanics bring them up. They indicate what work needs to be done. And then we give a spot for the work order on the printout to put in the meter reads if they need to by hand, as well as they could enter them in when we go to close the work order. So again, work orders, we have to start thinking work orders a little differently from before. Work orders before were kind of like the task. Now work orders contain a task. So a lot of times there's just one task, but there might be more than one task in a work order. You might have 2 or 3 different PMs and other information you want to be done during a work order cycle. So each of those work orders has a task, and a task is where everything is done. So we're kind of formulating everything to be wrapped around a work order task. So you have a work order number, and then you have a task number inside of that. And so it's basically 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of a thing for the task numbers. And work orders have their original, big long number that is generated automatically so that we never have a duplicate. But again, the idea here is the work orders is what kind of contains all of the work to be done and all the different pieces of software that we have for when you go to inventory to check out a part and charge a part in inventory. We ask if there's a work order in the work order line it's on. Well, that'll be changed to the work order task that it's in. And so they can come in and say it's task 2, work order, 504, kind of a thing. And then finally, we have the assigned vehicle maintenance system. So if you do have some kind of a fleet management provider, you're going to want to look again at that point and say, do we have anything in the fleet management that hasn't been assigned to code inside of ProFund accounting? So that way we know when we're talking to your fleet management system, what in the heck does this thing got? Okay, so let's begin where I began. Inside of equipment maintenance is the meter readings. So this is what your meter reading system is going to look like. You have all your pieces of equipment that have a PM on it or that have an old reading. So you're going to see a variety of sources on these readings that kind of tell you where it came from. A lot of these came from Samsara because they do have a Samsara value, but some of them were manually entered. Some were from the conversion when we converted your existing equipment and maintenance, which you have, into the new. And some are from, I don't think I have any that comes in from the import file. So let's begin. You can come in here and you can do just a manual equipment meter read. So you can leave the date blank if you want to, it'll default to today. But let's say I want to put a read in from the 15th of last month for equipment code. Looks like 144 is 730. He's already got a 730. Let's do 148 that had one. Again, once a reading date is in, you can't go backwards in time because this is the latest read. So if you said this read was 730 and the value for the number of hours was 69 and the mileage was, different thing, you got to be careful. So again, we're going to come in here and we're going to go to something 625, 148, equipment 148 on 625. So this is a 715 reading. And the type is the hours. And it looks like I would suggest that hours was probably broken. So let's say we change the hours on that, but we'll go ahead and put it in. So let's say it really was 151,020. And then you can hit enter or click the submit button and it changes you. So, the reading changes immediately. There isn't a save or anything like that here. As soon as you change your meter reading, it's changed for the latest reading. If you do happen to have a fleet management, you will see this button. You click it, and now I just read all the readings from the Samsara using the dates that Samsara has for the last time they read a piece of equipment. So you see I have some 8.4 ones because it just got brand new reads from the device. I've got some that are a little older because they haven't got a Samsara reading. So again, it was just that quick, and it really will be just that quick for you guys. You just click it, and it will bring the readings in. So it's one of the advantages of having a fleet management provider is to be able to get some of the readings. But not every piece of equipment is going to have their readings, automated by a device. from your fleet management provider. But your major trucks, the big pieces of equipment, the things that are expensive that you really need to make sure we maintain, those are the ones you should be focusing on to start with. Then other things that can float in there can come in as you get going on this. But if you do happen to have to get things manually, we have this nice utility to bring in a CSV file to get readings in. So I'm going to bring in a meter reading sample that I have. And right now the files readings doesn't have it, but it does show me codes that I have in my reading file that I don't have in my database. So again, some of these are probably pieces of retired equipment that might be there. So again, if it's retired, it will still show up as this doesn't exist because we only are working on, not retired, but disposed of, sorry. We only work on non-disposed of. All of this, if it's disposed of, we pretty much try to eliminate it from all of our screens here. So for instance, you won't see disposed of meter reads, but if you do, you can just delete the meter read right out of here and you'll never have a meter read again for that disposed of equipment. There's no reason to keep it, but then again, you don't really have to delete it either. It's kind of it's more of a thing, like you said, if you're just looking for your list of equipment that you really are working on, you really are doing preventive maintenance for, those are the ones you need to have part of this engine. If and only if those pieces of equipment actually use the engine that you're trying to get to. And again, we have two engines here, hours and miles for the meter reads. That's the two engines that this will maintain. But the rest of the world doesn't maintain it that way. The rest of the world gets everything from either dates or usage. The nice thing about it that we did from previous times is if you get something way out of whack, like let's say we'll just go to this 148 and I have hours and somehow I just put in 43 hours. Now it's 43 hours was the latest read. So that's going to throw off, you'll see that would throw off a lot of your scheduling and you can say, oh, well, that's a bad read. So I can just come back in here and I can, put in a better read. So the read was supposed to be like 15120 or 20. And there we go. Now the reading is that. And then if you go back to schedule maintenance and you recalculate the maintenance, it'll show up the way it should be. So again, it's just as simple. It's not like we say, oh, you got to have, exclusive rights to be able to change any of this stuff. The idea here is we try to keep this as simple as possible. Okay, so moving on then to the next side, setting up and maintaining preventive maintenance. So again, we want to start with task. And I want to thank Ontonagon. I don't know if Ontonagon's on, but they're allowing me to utilize their database with their Samsara codes. So I can show and tell what fleet management does for you. All right, so we're coming into here and we are getting the different services. So they did a Class A service and this was inspection, oil change. They want to make sure it at least happens once a year. So they have 365 days. So it happens at least once a year, but it's supposed to happen on mileage every 5,000 miles. So that's kind of their Class A service. Now, if this is the true for every vehicle you want a Class A on, that's great. But if you do have things like, valve adjustments, notice they don't have anything at the task level. So the general default is just saying, hey, when we put a valve adjustment on a vehicle, every vehicle is going to have their own integrals or intervals for the valve adjustment. There isn't anything that's galactic. Also, you'll notice we have this little parenthesis notation that we did to kind of show you what your deltas are for that. So D is for days, M is for mileage. You'll see H for hours and U for usage. So these are all valid ways to do it, but it's a nice shorthand. And we use this shorthand for a variety of things, but I'll get to it. And it's just a quick way to see when you go down your services, what they are without having to have to click on them at all. So like here, I already knew that this was day 700. And again, the task is service, but you could say replace air dryer and check lining, blowout, and if you wanted to blow out the line or anything else you want to add to this to be more descriptive is what we're hoping that you will come up with, okay? So again, while these are just beginning and your mechanic should know what to do, it's helpful if you get a new mechanic in that's not sure what, when you do a valve adjustment, you adjust the valves, but he doesn't realize also we want to, remove dirt, remove dust, clear particles, whatever else we're doing on these things. But I'm going to create a new task just because I can. So I'm going to click the plus, create a new task. My task is going to be called, what do we want to call this task? We're going to call this task and examine. And the description will be grease all joints and examine and repair as needed. And I want to make sure this is done at least, well, let's say once every or twice a year, but normally it's done every 200 hours. And you notice here it automatically adds the little descriptor here to it, so you don't have to do anything there. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And now I have grease and examine. We also created a thing for task groups. We haven't had any groups in here. So if I want a new group, I could say something like, oh, these are for pickup. So every time I get a pickup, we're going to add the task to the pickup. We want a Class A service to it. So we add that. And we want the air dryer on it. And a pickup is going to want to have a grease and examine on it. What the heck? Even though pickups don't go by hours, but you get the idea. You just generate a thing like this, and so now I have a group in here, and I'll show you what that's for later. So again, I'm going to save that. Remember, save is your friend. Now I'm going to go over to looking at all my pieces of equipment that I have in our system. Now we show everything that's in white means you do not have a service on it. So everything in green means you do have some kind of a preventive maintenance task on this. So we have the pickup, but let's say on this pickup, I wanted to add my group to it. So I click my group, pickup, and I add the group, and it adds all the other, even though I already had this one, it doesn't add it twice, but it just adds all the pieces of equipment I have for a group automatically to this pickup. Now, one of the things that you also have to remember is at this point, each one of these tasks has a last done date and last done miles, and you can key these in. These are completely up to you. You can set any parts required that you think needs to be done for this. If you want, if you know what for my 138 pickup, it's a Ford F350. So on my Ford F350, I can absolutely put in, what part code is done for the air dryer or whatever it is. So you can put these parts code in. I don't know, if I did so, I have no clue. Let me put one in. So the inventory code, let's see if they have an inventory code description. I'm sure that's in here somewhere, but I wouldn't know what it is off the top of my head. So I'm just going to come down here and say, we're going to throw, I'm not seeing it, so I am just going to throw this fuel filter into it. Quantity 1. And if you have specific notes about how to install it, or there's some magical, when you're putting this for this vehicle's notes, you could say, oh, magically they got to go to the left side, put your left leg in, take it out, shake it all about, kind of thing. You can put the notes in there so the mechanic doesn't have to figure that all out again when he goes to put this particular dryer, filter or dryer in. We don't know when it was last done, so it's going to come up and show up at the top as something that we need to do when we go to the preventive. But you kind of get the idea. You can come through here. You can add, my Ford Expedition looks like a pickup, so I'm going to add the group to that. So I select my pickup, I add the group. Now I've got Ford Expedition. So you kind of see it's not, there's not a lot to it, but you just got to make sure. So like this one, this Ford Pickup's Class A service was last done on 6/22. Now, my guess is this is from conversion data. So if you haven't been using our existing, preventive maintenance system up to date, these are going to be old dates and you're going to have to correct them. And I'm going to show you kind of how we do that a little bit in our other place. Another thing you can do that you might see here in PM Task is there might be like 10 different service air dryer after conversions, or oil change is a good one. We had one that had 19 different oil changes only because during the conversion, the name oil change was spelled with two I's, or capital O, capital C, or the whole thing was capitalized. You'll get that. So we did add a way where you can just right click and merge two of these PM tasks together, and it will suck the two together and do all the proper internal, calculations and combining as it does when you combine two together. So it's just an easy way to help clean it up a little bit. So when you come in here, you might have 40, 50, like one place had 98 tasks that were generated from the conversion. And like I said, most of it was just, they had an oil change, boom, had, again, a misspelling. They were doing something, that had a very long name, and that every time the guy typed in the long name in the old one, he would misspell one of the words. So again, you get the idea. It's just, it will be sort of a mess when you first get it started, when you after you get this installed for the first time. But we did build this into it to help speed up the process of cleaning up those, so you only have like possibly 20 tasks that you do PMs, that you have set up for PM tasks. These are the things you want done generally. And then the configure equipment, there's two ways to look at it. This is looking at it from an equipment perspective. You could also look at it from a task perspective and say, my Class A service is on all these pickups, and if I want to add another pickup to it, I can add 146. And it looks like, yep, it looks like 146 is already there. So let's see if I can add a Ford 151. Yeah, 151 is not here, so I can add it. Boom, Ford pickup has now got that class, that service. And again, you have to remember everything here this is when it was last done. And these are if I don't have deltas here, like this valve adjustment does not have deltas, so I'm putting the deltas here, or the intervals here, I should say, at this point. So on 301, it's, some of these, they're different. Like I said, the valve adjustment's different based on the vehicle itself. So some are different. So again, the number of hours you want to see that is just overridden here. And again, if we go back to the task for each piece of equipment, I show this number for the valve adjustment in parentheses on the task itself, if that makes sense. Everybody kind of sees that. So I know I'm going pretty quickly, but again, this really isn't that difficult to maintain and work with. At least we believe that. You will be, obviously, when you start using it, the ones to tell us we blew it or we didn't blow it. Some of you have been, we do have a couple road commissions out there using it now, and they're giving us great feedback to get these things adjusted so that it will be smooth for everybody else when they finally get it. So finally, one of the last pieces of this is going into, and I do have changes, so yeah, I want to save it. I can go into my schedule maintenance, and this is kind of where the crew data comes in. So this is what most people will see if they don't have a fleet management system. They will just see the PMs in their system. They won't see any defects or fault codes because they come strictly from the little devices that are in the vehicles. So these are like engine faults or faults that come off of the engine controller, and these are defects that comes from the DVIRs that are set up by the different systems when the driver puts in the inspection report. But for right now, you can kind of see. So what we did here is this is in order by the most egregious one that's over. So you can see these things are way overdue. The plus means this is the number, in this case, hours, the number of hours that this is overdue, which is a lot of hours, especially since, the name of this is supposed to be every 200 hours. I am over by 1,000 hours in my grease job. So we want to make sure, again, on these things, these are just mainly like this way from the conversion. So yeah, you can go look and clean these up. The other thing to note that we do is we keep everything together for vehicles. So if I come down here, the yellow ones, I haven't get there, but a 354, we keep everything from 354 together. We keep everything from 352 together in our listing here. So as things move around in the list because of the order, they're not really in code order. But if I want it, you can put this thing in code order. But we're saying this piece of equipment has the most egregious overdue. This is the next one. So that's the first order it comes in, is the egregious overdue. So then we can go, if I want it in code order, I can force it in code order. But you'll notice that we keep it together. So everything stays with the vehicle that it belongs to. So let's talk a minute about the different pieces of this. We have different colors. One is the color is yellow. So this is it's overdue. If it's in blue, these are bad overdues, and you can just, click and hold, or you can, how do I say it? You can just, you can do that to get them all, so there's just a lot of ways to, get a lot of them together. And then once you click one, you can simply create a work order for it, and it will then not be on this task. I'm not going to do that today, just till later in the day, later in this presentation. But I want to talk a little bit about the yellows. The yellows are, these are coming up. So this is every 5,000 miles. I have 130 hours left before this thing comes into the shop. I'm already 1,000 days over the here, so that's why it's showing up in blue on this task. But you could then, if you think about it, again, most of these are just going to be like it's over by 2 days or 5 days or 8 days, like this one. It's over by 13 hours on the 352. As you get this stuff cleaned up more and more, your number of hours will be much smaller, much freer, much less in there, so that these numbers will be like one thing will be in blue, but you'll have two things in white and maybe one thing in yellow. And so the idea is it's just in yellow, it's coming up. And so why not get both of them done at this point? Because you're on, that cycle, you might as well get the other one done so that it's brought in, so you don't have to bring it in another week to bring up, because this one is going to be overdue in a week. So again, it's just a nice way to say I want to be, so if I wanted to generate a work order, I would do this here and go ahead and say create the work orders. And then you notice right there, it changes them to white because you already have a work order assigned to it. So we don't care that it's overdue or not overdue, because you've already assigned a work order. It's not something you have to be alerted to. You've already taken care of it, in other words. So again, this is just stuff that needs to be taken care of. This is stuff that's coming up. You can change. I can say, I want to see what this is going to look like next month. So I want to come up here and say, we're going to go to September 1st, then you recalculate. So this is what the whole thing looks like coming up on when it's September 1st for the number of days overdue, things like that. What would be coming up, what shows up in yellow in adjustment. If I want to change this to say I want to see everything that's like 80%, I can just change it to 80 and I can recalculate. And now more things show up in yellow because they're 80% close to being done. So again, very flexible, doesn't take that long to do, should be quick to, when you recalculate, it shouldn't just sit and spin, it should just be as quick as you're seeing it here. Now, let's add some other nice parts to it so you can kind of see the name. You can see, this is what it's supposed to be. The reason it's over is for mileage, big number. But we're going to go ahead and add, if I have fleet management data, so I'm going to say go ahead and gather that. So I'm going off to Samsara right now, and I'm bringing in all of the information for my pieces of equipment. So once it comes in, so it does take a little bit, I gathered it, and now we see these are defects that came in from the DVIR reports. And these are fault codes that come in from the little magical device that's attached to the vehicles. So you'll see those as well if you do have a fleet management system in here. And again, I can take 138 and say, okay, I want to do this one. I want to add this one to it and generate a work order. And I'll have four tasks in the work order for my mechanics to maintain. But I didn't want to do that one for whatever reason. So I just want you guys to understand, it's just simply whatever we pick, we do, and it'll generate a work order. So if I don't want to see the faults, I can just turn them off and I'll just see the defects. If, and vice versa, I just want to see no defects, I just see the faults. And if I just want to see no PMs with it, I do that. And these are just all the fault codes that I got. So again, pretty flexible, pretty quick. It shouldn't take that long once you get this thing up and running to maintain it and to be able to use it for each day. It's supposed to be easy to keep going. But like I said, everything takes a little bit of effort at the beginning to make it right. And of course, you've been using either pencil paper up to this point or a Excel spreadsheet or something else. So hopefully this will make sense to you. If it doesn't, hey, get us on the phone and we can walk you through it. It's not a big issue to us. So that ends the scheduled maintenance. So we're going to create another work. I am going to create the 138 work order just for giggles. So I see that since I have a work order assigned to it, 1862, these are the pieces that, went to it. So we're going to go look at work orders next. So again, 1862 is the one I just created for equipment 138. I'm showing the tasks I want. We have the inspect and oil change for the first task. The grease and oil joints is the second, third, and fourth, and then fifth. The horn description doesn't work. First aid kit was not in the truck. So we're going to just, again, we're going to go ahead and assign a mechanic if we want. Oh, we don't have anything else turned on yet. Okay, I have to do that. We can pick which garage it's going to be done in and just save it. But a couple of things you'll note from before, we don't really have a description on the work order itself because technically the work order doesn't really have a description. It's all the tasks within a work order that have their descriptions of what they're supposed to be doing. So that's one thing you'll be seeing. We can look at reason codes, and there's a variety of reason codes that you can set up. It's configurable by you. You can add as many reason codes as you want so that you can choose different reason codes for things. You can create work orders by hand just by clicking on new. All pretty straightforward to be doing. So the date time in, so it came in today. Why not? It was created today, came in today. The mechanic did everything. And we charged out all the parts to it. We've got all the labor in it, so we're going to close it. So when we close on and we save it, we need to put in the required fields. So we have an hours. So my hours that it came in, currently it's saying 3.6 was the current read I just got. So that came from Samsara. The current mileage came in at 2,505. So I'm going to go ahead and use those, but actually it was 2015 by the time we got the truck in. So the last read was that. So I'm going to just go ahead and click OK. The work has been closed. So when the work has been closed and those have been done, we can come back to schedule maintenance. And we will not see our 138 anymore. It's down at the bottom, just waiting for, again, the engines to do their thing. Okay? Does that all make sense?
Hey, George, what do you do with the faults?
If you add them to work order, they'll disappear. They won't show up again until it happens again after the work order. Once the work order has been completed, then if the fault comes in again, we'll show it again. But otherwise, we ignore the faults until that point.
So when you gather your fleet management data, let's say the truck had a fault today, but then you go in the morning and gather the fleet management data and the truck doesn't have a fault, does the fault on that truck disappear?
No, still there. As soon as we record a fault, we keep it forever until you deal with it. So even if it's intermittent, we want you to make sure that you knew that this fault happened. We didn't want it to just disappear and all of a sudden, no, it's okay. It had a fault for a reason. The way we looked at it was, if it's going to go ahead and spend the time to report that it had a fault, there's a reason it's reporting it had a fault. Whether it's a stupid, simple one like a cylinder misfire or whatever, it's important that you at least know about it until you clear it. And you don't have to create a work order to clear it. We're going to build something that you can clear out a work order or a fault code if you need to. It's not in yet, though. We're still working with Samsara on how to clear it correctly. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Same thing with DVIRs, but DVIRs is usually from a report that the driver has put together. But again, if you want to ignore it, you can. And if he puts it in tomorrow, it'll show up again. Because even though you ignored it. There is some faults that are permanent that will show up every day. We're working with Samsara to work out how we can detect that so we don't pull it in again. We don't, once we grab a fault from the fleet management, at least from Samsara, because they're so intermittent, that we found we could read it 5 times and only get one fault. And, the other 4, we don't get faults for it. So to me, it's like either the device is malfunctioning or there's something that's fairly intermittent. It's hard on some of the systems to know which is which. And so we're building a way that you can tell us, this fault is always going to happen. We're never, like the EVAP system leak detected. Possibly you might say, hey, that's not a important fault code, so I can ignore it. Or, maybe it isn't. I'm saying, I don't know. I'm not a mechanic, so I don't know about these things. All I know is we need a way that you can control whether you need to see it or not. But the important part is you don't miss it. In other words, there's not something here that, we are going to show it until you either put it into a work order or you tell us, my guess is right now, our current decision is we're going to add a right click to this little button over here and a menu will pop up to see if what you want, if you want to ignore permanently ignore the fault this time, a variety of options to do, if you know what I mean. All right, I'm going to move on to the next part. So this is schedule maintenance. Again, I want you to understand that. We went into work order a little bit. So work order, it's important to kind of get customized with this thing. We just changed this quite a bit from the last time you've seen it, or some of you may have seen it. I'm not positive where we were with the last time when we sent it out. It's been a while. But we did change a couple of things at the top. We've gotten rid of several descriptions and several notes that we used to have. So notes are now per task, not per work order, where there used to be a per work order thing. The printout is still in progress, so I don't have a good, or we're changing the layout of the work order print to be a little bit more similar to what you see here, where we have a thing at the top that describes the equipment that we're dealing with, and then all of the different tasks that are done. So these are all the open work orders. If you want to see your closed ones, you can just click the limit and, voila, the closed ones show up. So I'm going to take one that was,
George.
Yeah.
Hey, when you add parts required, does it automatically, because you're gonna give it a code, does it automatically take it out of inventory?
No, it's just this is what's required. Eventually, we want to build something once you have, if people are going to adopt the parts required to say when you want to go to create the work order, we'll check to see if those parts have the quantity in stock and we'll say, oops, there's not enough, stock to perform this work order. That's not here yet. It's not coming anytime soon until I have enough people adopting this to say, it's still useful to put them in right now because it helps a mechanic not have to know about a part to go grab out of the quote, the pro fund accounting part number, if you know what I mean. They don't know what number it is. It's just a number to them. But it's really the, Ford fuel filter or the Ford oil filter that they're
So,
getting.
so let's just say after the fact, so you create the work order and you go and print it, and then
Correct.
you use the scan gun, you scan the barcode at the top, it brings up
Right.
and then you can scan your part number and then put it either line number 1 or line number 2 if there was
Right.
parts.
Correct. And that
It's
charges it to the
automatically
part.
pull out inventory.
Yeah, that automatically puts it into parts. Now, also, what we've done is we're updating the MyWork system so that when you're putting your labor in on a work order task, if you add the inventory parts at that point, we also assign the parts to the work order at that task up on the MyWork system. So if I go in equipment and I go to work orders and I bring up an older work order. Yeah, there we go. So they've been using it correctly. So you'll see that these are the inventory. This was the inventory code, the quantity, the dollar amount, and what it was that they charged out to work order task 1. Here, doesn't look like they did any labor to it. It is what it is. So you can kind of see that. And then again, if you go to equipment, you should be able to see it again. Crud, let me bring that back up. So I missed the piece of equipment that work order is for. 0622. So if I buzz over to equipment mate and I go to 0622 and I come under the work order task tab and I load all the information. This is all the tasks that have been done on the different work orders for it. And then I can come over to history and I can load up the history. This is all the labor that was charged against that, piece. I don't know if it has any work order numbers in here because I didn't see any labor with work order numbers, but if it was tied to work order, it'd be here listed. The work order number on the labor. I'm just going to try to go back and see. I got a little bit, but no. And then we've got equipment charges. These are the places where this particular code is used. So you can kind of see, basically when it was used on what roads. And then we can go to the inventory. This is all the inventory that was ever charged to this piece of equipment. And I think in here we have a work order line in here. We don't. This is all the direct equipment charges that were done, not through a work order. And then we have the other, and this is just AP stuff. So, I mean, we try to give you all that information to you, but it may be too much in a way that's not good. So you can, basically yell at us once you get this installed and up and running a little bit to say we need this information would be very helpful to have. All right, what I want to cover the last bit before we go is the assigned vehicles for your fleet management provider. Assigned by VIN for the ones that will match the VINs we have. So these VIN numbers are not in there. Now we've looked at them and basically what it is either this number's off by one or what, like the T is in Pro Fund Accounting, it's a J and not a T for whatever reason. But you don't have to make it by VIN. You can simply just click on one and say, this is probably, given that they named it 389 in Samsara, it is probably 389 equipment code. So you can just basically pick it here to 389 in the equipment code and assign it. And it disappears from here. This list and is now matched together in Pro Fund. So if I were to do another like meter readings and gather the meter readings, I should see 389 showing up in here, where I probably didn't have it before. Yep, 389 just came in. So the last read that Samsara had was from 713. So simple enough, pretty easy to deal with. Assigning the vehicles, again, you can assign it by license plate. Again, the license plate, as you can see, you might have keyed in with an X with spaces, without spaces. So it all matters if you have that on, equipment. Do you have your plate number on the equipment? So if I come in here, is this plate number the same with the X's? Doesn't look like any of these plates are even entered. So, but you could match it up by plate number. But like I said, most places are using the VIN directly on there. So if I go to like these pickups, that would be the number you'd have to match, and it needs to be identical to the one that's on Samsara. So like one, you make that a J or K instead of a G. It looks fine, but they're different between the two. So we can't, we wouldn't be able to match it. Everybody have a great lunchtime, great afternoon, and we will see you in 2 weeks for reconciliation and month end kind of, making sure your A equals B equals C kind of things in the data.
You are now working smarter with Pro Fund Accounting. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more content like this.